You talk about debt is not a math problem, it's a behavior problem. Talk about that a little bit.
With the onslaught of social media out there, we're told we need to drive a certain car, we're supposed to wear certain clothes, and it's reinforced over and over again. And that is poisoning our minds. Then comes Visa. Remember the commercial? You deserve this. And you know what? No, you don't deserve it. The younger generation feels that everybody's in debt and it's okay to be in debt. And debt is such a common part of our culture. If it's not in the bank, don't spend it.
Exactly.
Because credit cards are a trap. Debt is a treadmill that doesn't end unless you make some drastic changes in order to make it end.
What do you recommend as far as budgeting?
I recommend going to debt.com.
Joining me today is Howard Dvorkin. He's the chair of debt.com. He's the architect of the largest credit counseling service in America. I met him at a conference a few months ago. He was so generous with his time to talk to me, and I just found him to be so approachable on a topic that hits so many Americans. And when this episode airs, it'll be in January when everybody's credit cards are going to be hitting their mailboxes from their Christmas spending. So welcome to my show, Howard. I appreciate you joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. And, it's really wonderful meeting you at a conference. And I was speaking at that conference and you came up to me, I think in the valet line, if I'm not mistaken. And we started talking and we were instant friends from there. So it was terrific to finally, to talk to you and great to be on your show. So thank you so much for your time.
Yes, I really appreciate you joining me. I talk about reinvention as kind of the platform or the foundation for, people to start over or to kind of change, coming from whether it's a divorce or a business context or whatever. And I always like to start with my guests and talk about their own personal reinvention stories. And that, we've all had that moment when you were so far down in the ditch that you just didn't think that you would ever get out. You thought you were stuck, maybe in a circumstance or a mindset or whatever. And so I always like to start and ask my guests to tell me about your moment when you were in the ditch and how did you work your way out of it?
I don't know if I'm out of it. Truthfully, I think I'm still in the ditch or I end up in the ditch. I used to have a friend from Georgia and he would say, Howard, got to get the truck out of the ditch, got to back it up and go forward. And that's my attempt at a Southern Georgian accent.
I like that. You got to back it up to go forward. That's kind of true about life, right? You got to back up.
It is. And Michelle, my life has been an absolute roller coaster. Growing up in New Jersey in somewhat of a tougher town, had a nice family and all of a sudden that changed for me. My father died and it was a pretty tragic death and it definitely impacted me and I went off the rails and I did some crazy stuff that I'm still not proud of that I did, but certainly I was able to get an education and educate myself, become a CPA, and figure out how to help a lot of people in doing it. So I've got a great job. I love what I do. I mean, I've been able to help 13 million people in the last 32 years.
That's amazing.
And I, in saving families, and you deal with a lot of divorce and things like that. And certainly debt has a big play. It comes into play there. It's actually, somebody told me the number one reason for divorce. And I said, debt. It's debt. It's 50% of all marriages fail from or fail because of debt loads. They said, no, the number one reason for divorce in America is marriage. So
That's true. That is true. And, divorce lawyers would probably argue about whether it's finances or communication or determination, maybe, as the reason for divorce. But yes, definitely marriage is the precursor.
and it is it's pressure. I mean, it's a lot to do with communication. And unfortunately, both my wife and I have been divorced from other people, and we've been married, happily married for 26 years now.
Oh, that's great.
And she hasn't gotten sick of me yet. So I know a little bit about marriage. I know a lot of bit about debt, and trying to help people navigate through that is a difficult stance. And
Sure.
certainly when it comes to business, I've advised a lot of people on business. We run a handful of companies, so I do know something about business. And being the largest credit counseling agency in the world has helped us see and get a lot of exposure to what people are feeling. And certainly right now in America, certainly people are overridden by debt and the financial pressures of everyday life. And it's causing a lot of challenges. And certainly, Michelle, I don't think for a second that you're not going to be a very busy person in 26 and 27 because people are just up to their necks in debt.
Yeah.
And that's going to cause some challenges within the home.
So going back to your childhood story, like your origin story that kind of set the stage for your success in this area, from what I read, your father passing away really had a financial impact on your family and kind of set y'all down in the ditch with the business that your father ran being taken over and y'all being you know really in a poor place, not able to make ends meet.
Well, the reality was we lived almost a fantasy life up until that point. We had a house, a dog, the family was together, and all of a sudden, Dad passed away out of nowhere, stumbled in my room when I was 13 and essentially died in my arms. And certainly I didn't understand what was going on. And at that time, there was really no counseling. It was just,
Right.
walk it off, essentially.
Right.
And, just deal with it. And I was like, okay, I'll deal with it. And I gravitated towards some very, very bad people and did some very, very bad things. And certainly, my mother struggled to make ends meet, to try to keep our finances together. And for many, many years, it was difficult. I mean, I'm not going to say we were poor growing up, but at that time, we could have qualified for welfare. My mother was too proud to ever take it, but there certainly were times when we had some challenges
Yeah.
financially. And so that helped me understand where people are.
Right.
When I went into accounting, I did normal accounting things, but it was also during the days of bank failures in the late 1980s, and
Right.
certainly in Texas, Dallas and Houston, there were a lot of banks
A
down
lot
there
of them.
that I shut down.
Yeah.
And I was in on that team, and during the weekends I was shutting down banks. During the weeks I was negotiating with banks on behalf of my clients that were their loans were being called, and it was a terrible time for this country. The reality was, I was able to see what debt does to people and how it impacts people. And debt is a weird thing. There's good debt and there's bad debt. Sometimes good debt, like buying a house, is good. Paying for an education is good. Going out on vacation, putting it on your credit card, is probably not
Not so
so
good.
good.
Well, what do you
And
think was the moment where you decided in your life that you were going to let life be your teacher, but not your jailer? Like you were going to that you were going to change your trajectory from, this ditch that you got yourself in, and you were going to make a difference. Well,
well, certainly I knew I was heading down the wrong path when I found myself chained to a pole in a police station in the backwoods of Jersey for doing, actually, I didn't even do anything that time. So,
that time.
that time. But I looked around and I said, I'm better than this and I need to change my ways. And that time when I finally, the next day, I cut myself off from those bad influences and uh, changed the trajectory of my life. I mean, we are who we hang out with, meaning I am a full believer of show me your friends and I'll show you who you are.
Right.
It's just sad if you hang out with people that are bad people or not very motivated, you become a bad person or not very motivated. And that was the path I was on. And I changed myself and I educated myself. I decided I'm going to college and I went. I actually paid attention in school and graduated somewhere near the top of my class.
Did you have to work your way through school? I mean, I assume y'all didn't have the money.
It's funny. The first year, I actually, my mom told me, I want you to go to college, but we can't afford it. And you're pretty much an idiot, so you have to pay for your first year of college because I'm afraid you're going to screw it up. And I know that you're so tight with money that if I tell you you have to pay for it, you're going to pay attention to it. So I found the cheapest college I could find for my first year, which was West Virginia University, which I think I paid $459 a semester for tuition, and I think my beer was more than my tuition. And I went through, and I really wasn't a good fit for me. I did my classes, I did okay, but it really wasn't a good fit. And by the grace of God, I turned around and I was the gal across the street was going to a college in Washington, and I talked to her, and she said, "Oh, and go down there, you would love it." So I went over to that college, which was American University in Washington, D.C., and the counselor, or the assistant dean, met with me, and she said, "What is a nice boy from New Jersey doing in West Virginia University? You need to come to us." And I was able to go through and pay for college. And I worked in the summers very, very hard.
Do you
And
think working to pay for college made you appreciate it more?
absolutely, I paid attention to it. Now, I didn't. In all truthfulness, the finances freed up my sophomore year, so I was able to get some help from my family. And, we were able to go to that college. However, when I decided to go to grad school, mama's like, I'm done. You're on your own. So there I had to work to go to grad school and put myself through grad school. And that was very, very difficult because I'd be up at 6 in the morning in the office at 7, leave at 6, drive to class to be there to take a class from 7 in the night to 10 o'clock at night, go to the library for 2 hours,
Yep.
and then
Do
do it
it
again
over
the next
again.
day.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
was a very, very tough time for that.
Yeah.
However, gave me a work ethic, and I've always been a good worker and a hard worker. Maybe not the most productive worker, but I certainly have been able to focus, and I was sitting there doing all this great accounting work back then and working my tail off. And then I bought a house and I noticed the bills started coming in, and I had a tremendous amount of income at the time. I rose through the accounting ranks very quickly. But the reality was I bought a house and I started to see bills come in. And whether it was buying a couch for $3,000 or buying groceries or buying gas. And I said, this is almost addictive using these credit cards. I
Right.
wonder if other people are seeing this. And this is the late 80s, early 90s, and I started to do research and I went to a library. You remember what those are?
I do. I'm old
Yeah.
enough to remember libraries.
Yeah, and I went to a library and I did the research and I said, wow, other people are really, really struggling, but nobody knows where to get help. And the only help was down in Miami, and it was 3 months to get help if you're in credit card debt.
Wow.
And you know what? If you're in debt, you need help then and there. So I
Well,
was
and
talking to,
I remember when I was in college in the late 80s, they were passing out credit cards to college kids like it was candy
yeah,
or beer or pizza.
well, you know why? Because a credit card that you get in college, the average tenure of a person who gets a credit card in college is 15 years. You're going to hold on to that credit card because those were the good times of your life. And you know what? The average tenure of a person that gets an average credit card is 4 years. So it's a heck of a good investment to hand a credit card. And guess what? Chances are, if Junior gets in trouble and can't pay the bill in
Mm,
college,
yep, mama and daddy.
Mama's going to pay the bill in college.
Yeah,
So
no,
it's
my parents, I remember when I was in college, my parents bailed me out of my credit card debt a couple of times and kept fussing at me about it and then finally took them away from me, because I wasn't producing any income to pay for them, but I sure liked spending on them.
well, unfortunately, I have seen a lot of kids in college go a little crazy, and actually, I've seen people actually had to drop out of college. I had one client, I remember counseling them, and they're like, I got to drop out of college. I have to work. And I'm like, listen, maybe you take a semester off, you get your finances together, and you get back in college.
You talk about debt is not a math problem, it's a behavior problem. I found that to be an interesting quote, just about the identity issues associated with debt, the psychology associated with debt, and that it's more about kind of the reasons that you're overspending as opposed to, the numbers of it. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, as a society, there is so much pressure, and with the onslaught of social media out there, we're told we need to drive a certain car, we're supposed to wear certain clothes, we're supposed to look a certain way, and it's reinforced over and over again, and that is poisoning our minds. Credit cards, when they were originally invented, now I'm dating myself back into the late 60s, was Diners Club. That was the first credit card. And you would go and you would charge on Diners Club and you would get the bill every month and you would pay it.
Yeah.
But you couldn't build up debt. Then comes Visa. And if you remember the commercial, you deserve this. You earned this. And you know what? No, you don't deserve it. You
Right,
don't
because you
earn
don't
it.
have the money for it.
If you have cash, then you deserve it.
Yeah,
But you can't sit there and actually expect to have a great life if you're up to your neck in debt. It
right.
just doesn't work. You have to get rid of debt and you have to work hard to get rid of debt. And, I always say, and certainly around Christmas time, if it's not in the bank, don't spend it because
Exactly.
things aren't going to get better next week, next month, next year. Chances are your income's going to be very similar and things aren't going to open up. But if you're running a balance on your credit card, you're paying 20+% interest, and that eats up. You're going to take your family out for a meal, which is going to cost you,
20%
I,
more.
well, no, 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 no. Say you take them out for $100 meal. That $100, if you're sitting there, if you're putting it on your credit card and you already have balances, depending on how much you have, you may be still paying for that 5 years
5
later.
years
So that
later.
$100 meal is now $200 or more.
Right.
So you got to realize, hopefully, it was a good meal, but debt doesn't go away. It's
Well,
non-discriminatory.
and don't you think that a lot of people who get into debt problems feel ashamed because maybe they're successful in other outward areas, but they actually are living kind of this empty success because of the debt, and they're ashamed to tell anybody about it?
There is some psychology that would agree with you. The reality is the younger generation feels that everybody's in debt and it's okay to be in debt because my parents were in debt. And unfortunately, the generation that you and I may have grown up with and that depression era mentality that you shouldn't be in debt has gone. And debt is such a common part of our culture.
What role do you think the switch from mainly a cash society like green cash to plastic has played in that like mindset of the tangibility of debt?
I would like to say pain. Because you know what? If you have cash, that green stuff, you don't want to give that up. You don't want to lay that out on a table. That's hard work.
Right.
It's cool. It's fun to whip your credit card out and swipe it, and you're done. You're walking out with a bag of stuff. And the reality is that, you know, there's somewhat of that, certainly on using the internet to do your purchasing. That has even snowballed. Everybody's taking credit cards, everybody's taking debit cards.
Yeah. And
So there is
electronic
a big
money and
change of cash. We are becoming a cashless society, whether we like it or not. The ability to Venmo somebody right on the
yeah.
spot, kind of cool, but your money's going out, but there's no pain in it. When it's green stuff, there's psychological pain.
Well, and it seems, and you obviously know more about this than I do from the economic standpoint, but when we were a cash society, there wasn't all these middlemen in the middle of our money. Like I had $100 bill and you had a service I wanted, and we traded or bartered that. Where now, where everything's electronic, there's so many middlemen in the middle of all the economics that are taking parts or percentages or interests or, whatever in the money, in the middle of the money, that it seems like there's just like a more complex monetary system.
Well, it's also increasing the cost of doing business because every time somebody whips out that credit card, there's exchange fees, there's all these fees. It could be 2 to 5% depending on which credit card and which network you're dealing with. So, that $100 is not $100 anymore. It's $95 is what the person is getting.
And whenever I was taught how to manage debt or get out of debt or whatever, I was taught with the envelope system. I'm sure you remember the envelope system, that if you're going to budget and you've got X amount for gas and X amount for groceries and X amount for this and that, you have your envelopes and you put your cash in it, and that was what you spent. And when the envelope was empty, you were done spending. And now with everything being electronic versions of money, I mean, you don't really have the ability to do that, envelope system of budgeting anymore. What do you recommend as far as budgeting?
I recommend going to debt.com because we have great budgeting tools, probably the best out there that are available. We've taken the best of the best. Some of them I may have borrowed from other smart people, and Some of them I may have designed myself and ourselves. However, uh, there are some very good uh, technological advances over the last 30 years that I have seen. Before it was pencil and paper. The envelope system is an old way of doing it. It's a smart way of doing it. But, at the end of the day, the greatest thing you could do is sit down at your kitchen table with a piece of paper and start figuring out what you're spending. On our websites, there is some AI interactive tools that not only allow you to create a budget, but it also compares what you're spending to other people in that region to see if you're on track. If you're sitting there spending $700 at the grocery store every month,
Yeah.
but your neighbors are spending maybe $400, obviously there's a problem.
Right.
If
And that
spending
helps you with the comparative problem of like,
Absolutely, and
yeah,
we have spent a lot of time and a lot of money going through and building tools that can not only produce a household budget for you on a monthly basis, but also compare what you're spending and maybe give you ideas. And we're trying to build it even more so to have an interaction with an AI generated counselor, which is programmed to do what a human is supposed to be doing when they see these issues. Now, we're just starting that, but I'm telling you, the advancements in technology are going to make a lot of lives better uh, in from what I see in the future.
that's awesome. So for the person who's out there, they're getting their credit card bills in and they've spent too much at Christmas and they find themselves drowning in debt in the financial ditch at this moment. What's the first thing that they can do to start getting themselves out?
Again, they really need to sit down at their kitchen table and say, okay, this is where I am with all their bills and their bank statements. This is where I've been. Where do I want to be? And figure out a household budget, meaning go through, figure out your income, figure out your expenses. Can I cut down on some of these expenses? Then look at your debt and see how can I take these debts and eliminate them over time. It's not going to, it took time to get into debt. It's certainly going to take time to get out of debt. And I will tell you, nothing happens fast when you're in debt, and you got to take uh, the initiative to figure out a plan. But part of that is taking your highest interest credit card and starting to pay it off. Do not pay minimum payments. Credit cards are a trap. You need to go through and figure out a plan on how am I going to get out of debt. There's always these different methods, the avalanche method, the snowball method. At the end of the day, as an accountant, you have to take your highest interest charging credit card and eliminate it, whether the balance is $1,000 or $10,000. That's the one you need to attack first. First, you try to figure out if you could switch things around to interest free balance transfers, but that only lasts a little while. But take your highest interest bearing credit cards and disregard the minimum payment. You should be charging or paying 3 times what they tell you to pay because they want you on the treadmill of debt.
Right.
They want to keep you running on that treadmill for the rest of your life. And I don't know about you, but I get tired when I'm on a treadmill after a
100%.
while. And you know what? That's exactly what this is.
Yeah.
Debt is a treadmill that doesn't end unless you make some drastic changes in order to make it.
Well, in your book, Credit Hell, you talk about leaks in your spending. So you talk about like analyzing what your debt is, what your expenses are, but then there's these leaks. And I find that these days, every vendor, everybody wants to be on the automatic payment system, which is another form of, I mean, it's not credit card debt. It may not have the interest rate associated with it, but they're hitting my credit card automatically. And there's some people that you do business with that won't do business any other way. And then you forget that you have this subscription or this, whatever that's hitting you every month and you don't even realize it.
And it's a trap. Even your phone bill, your cell phone bill, they pay you $10 a month not to receive a bill in the mailbox, so they don't want you looking at it. So they know that you're not going to access online your account every
And
month.
review.
Instead of
Yeah.
having it in your hand, they'll discount your bill by $10. And you know what? It sounds like a great deal. I just had that. I took that. And I was one of those people that never looked at my bill online. And then I looked at my bill online and I'm like, oh my God,
Oh my
what's
gosh,
going
right?
on here? What are these charges?
Right.
They were charging me for these crazy things like data storage on my cell phone. And I was like, I didn't even know what data storage on my cell phone is. And I was like, but I have it on my phone. Why do I need it on my cell phone? And the problem is automatic payments, although it makes life easier, you lose track of all those fees. And whether it's being debited from your bank account or hitting your credit card, it's still a lot. There's a lot of leaks, and more importantly, there's a lot of fat. I could take anybody's budget in America, and sit there and find 15% and reduce your budget by 15%, and you won't even notice
Miss
it.
it.
You will never
So
see it.
with those automatic payments and those leaks, I mean, you can't even really like change your credit card number because they'll just follow you. Like, there's not a good, effective way to fix that, is there?
You got to pay attention.
Yeah.
You know, at the end of the day, people need to pay attention to their finances, and whether it's sitting down again, focusing, giving 1 hour a month to focus on all the bills that are coming in and all the money that's going out, a lot can be accomplished in that 1 hour. Also, you need to communicate it to your family. The one thing, that I see, a lot of people don't talk about money in the family. I have a friend whose daughters are just taking advantage of her, and she's actually a lawyer, and I'm like, why don't you sit down and talk about it? And her response to me was, Howard, we don't do that. And I'm like, well, you should. And if you don't, you're going to still have this problem 10 years from now. The reality is you need to communicate. My house, my home that I grew up in, we talked about money. We talked about uh, international politics. We talked about interesting things, but a lot had to do with business and money, and we communicated. And maybe that's why I do what I do, because it's something I've been around my whole life. But don't be afraid to talk about money with your kids, because it's going to train them for the future so they don't become a slave to their credit card
Yeah.
companies.
So you mentioned earlier, and I want to touch back on it, about the difference between debt as a strategic lever for some purpose, and maybe let's talk about a business owner who wants to start a business or is starting a business and needs credit for inventory or something like that. So where is the balance between using debt strategically versus kind of falling off the cliff of the debt problem, especially for business owners?
It really comes in what you're doing with the debt. Are you using it to leverage against to make money, more money, or are you using it for dumb things? Are you taking your debt and buying a motorcycle because it could get you to work, save you gas? I don't know how a $12,000 motorcycle saves you gas, but I'm sure it does before you die on it. But at the end of the day, um, and I'll be the first to admit, I do arbitrage. I take I have access to low debt, and I will take that out and loan that to people who are doing real estate projects at a much higher debt. So I will make that spread.
Right.
Do I like being in debt? No. But is it smart? Heck yeah. If somebody's going to pay me 20% interest to so they can complete their business project and I'm borrowing it at 6%, that's a pretty
That
good spread.
yeah, that makes sense.
Yes. But the other side is if you're using it for dumb stuff, to buy dumb stuff that doesn't help you make money. As I said earlier in this show, I said sometimes there's good debt and there's bad debt. Good debt is going to make you money. Buying a house is going to make you money. But paying for an education is going to eventually make you money because statistically you're going to come out of college and make more than you would if you didn't go to school. Bad debt is sitting there using your credit cards when you're carrying a balance and going to Starbucks and buying all your friends a round of coffee for $5 a cup. I mean, just Starbucks I pick on a lot. My wife is addicted to that place, so I finally bought her like professional coffee machine with the little capsules that she puts in, and she actually said, "I just tried this. The coffee was good." I'm like, "Great. Can you stop going to Starbucks every day?"
Probably not. Starbucks is also socializing.
I don't know. I would rather be antisocial and be have bucks in the bank.
So you've said that you can't build wealth if you don't control your spending. So let's
Right.
turn to kind of the upside of why you want to control your debt, and that is to build wealth. Talk about how to build wealth so that you are making progress in life.
Listen, you have to sit there and continually make funds, make money, and try to go through and utilize the resources that you have. When I first started out, I was addicted to uh, mutual funds. I loved mutual funds. I read lots of things, and every month I would put in $100 into each mutual fund I had, and over time they grew to tremendous amounts. Something as small as that, $100 a month, putting it in, you have to continually invest. Now, I want to really talk about the power of compound interest. Essentially, compound not only interest but dividends. Compounding earnings is probably the most powerful tool of investing ever. You could pick the greatest stock in the world and it could double and triple, but over time, if you're young, you you should be putting money away. Certainly if you're coming in from from a divorce and you're separated and maybe you get a settlement, you got to take some of that and just put that into a good investment, uh, into an index fund and with low cost, and just leave it there and let it compound. The amazing part was I was always picking stocks and I was always picking uh, managed portfolios to grow my money, and I did quite well. However, if I just picked an index fund with a very low rating and let it compound for the same amount of time, I would have made more. Yeah, and it's a hell of a lot less stressful. So when good times are going, great. Leave it there, enjoy the ride. When bad times happen and your money goes down and the value of your account goes down, instead of being nervous and taking it out, add to it, put more in, and take advantage of those dips. And I promise you that you will have a big pile of money at the end of the day. And certainly, we can't rely on Social Security when for
That's
retirement. It's just not going to happen. You have to take control for yourself. You know, the company pension, probably not something that I would bank on because who knows where that is. Most of those big companies are underfunded and it's a huge liability. But the reality is take control, understand common sense investing techniques, and let your money work for you rather than you work for your money.
a lot of women uh, have a problem with investing because they're so scared to let go of control of their money. What do you say to women who are kind of maybe not planning for their future retirement as well as men do? What do you say to that? How do we fix the women investing problem?
I think that's a little chauvinistic, young lady,
Oh, it's
but
actually statistical.
a little bit, because we're all scared when we see the market drop 1,000 points in one day, and all you hear is the TV people and all the media going through and chatting about the market is crashing, the world is coming to an end. You get scared. Turn it off.
Yeah.
I would say don't be influenced by other people. I will tell you that even I get influenced sometimes. And my daughter, who I think is a very smart person, uh, gets a little nervous and she's giving me stock advice. And I'm like, wait a minute, you've never bought a stock in your life. What are you talking about? What are you doing? And it's quite cute. Don't give me stock advice. Just stick with a method and stay with it. You know, do your homework. And my suggestion is Vanguard Group, which is a great mutual fund company, has what's called an ETF, electronic traded fund, and VOO is the symbol, and it's an index of the market, and you just put it in there, and it should grow 7 to 10% over the course of time
Yeah.
for the rest of your life, and just leave it there. The market goes down, think of it as an opportunity.
Right.
Think of it as your ability to go through and 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 make money and make more money when there's blood in the street. Berard Baruch, who is a very famous Wall Street investor, has Baruch College, uh, and he turned around and he said, "You make money when there's blood in the street," and it's true.
Yeah. When the market goes down, it's time to buy.
Yeah.
And you also in your book Power Up, you talk about knowing your numbers. So you talk about like your net worth, your credit score, your spending, and then risk. Talk about risk analysis as it relates to building wealth.
Listen, there you can take risk, but don't take dumb risk. If you have a net worth of $50,000, you shouldn't be betting $25,000 on something that may or may not happen.
Yeah.
You know,
Probably
if
market.
somebody has a net worth of $1 million, maybe it's worth betting that $25,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you should not risk money, but life is risk. But you also have to realize what stage of life you're in. If you're younger, you could take more risk. If you're older, you have to cushion that risk And maybe being in 100% stock portfolio is not a very bright idea, because if you're planning on retiring and the stock market crashes and it's a down market for a lot of years, maybe that's not the thing you should be doing. And you need that income from a bond portfolio or even a cash portfolio to make that change. But
Right.
don't be influenced by other people, because other people don't know. And frankly, they may sound convincing, but don't be swayed.
Yeah. What what is the greatest lesson about debt that you ever learned?
I think it's really, don't get into it. Once you start, it's kind of addictive. And the greatest thing that I've ever come across is very simple, and I may have said it earlier. If the money's not in your pocket, you shouldn't be buying something. And whether that's a car, whether that's home, whether you can afford it or not, you need you need to be able to afford things and don't live outside your means. If you're if you're tight on a budget, well, maybe you shouldn't be driving a Mercedes or a BMW. Maybe you should be driving a Honda or something more affordable. Uh, People, unfortunately, try to live outside their means to have a bigger presence because we're told we have to look successful, or we deserve this car. No, you don't, and you shouldn't have to fake it till you make it. That's a dumb thing to do. I see so many divorcees, both men and women, go through, and all of a sudden they get divorced, they're getting plastic surgery, they're getting new cars, they're getting new clothes, and all of a sudden they're $25,000 in debt. And they look great, but they can't go out to show anybody because they have no money
Yeah.
to even go to the clubs or whatever the case may be. I mean, the reality is the fake it till you make it concept is just dumb. It's dumb. It doesn't work. And there's so much pressure on society right now, simply from social media. It's taken over common sense, and you shouldn't be doing it. And certainly, the credit cards makes it very, very easy to get yourself in trouble. But don't be seduced by the availability. Be strong, plan, sit down, whether it's on a monthly basis or a weekly basis, figure out your finances, always pay attention to the money.
You said, or maybe it was before we started recording, you were talking about that on debt.com, y'all have developed a new divorce index. Talk about that for me, for people that may be facing divorce and the financial impact of divorce on themselves.
So for many, many years, every year debt.com does a divorce survey. And we talk to 1,000 people who are going through divorce and what was the reason for divorce and what happened after the divorce. And there's a tremendous amount of statistical information that's available out there. But really, what it comes down to is, what are the reasons for the divorce? Was it poor communication? Was it financial pressures? Was it children? Children put a lot of pressure on a marriage.
Children are
And
very
you know,
expensive.
my suggestion being on his second marriage, I always tell my wife this about we talk sometimes about my first wife, and it just keeps her on her toes. She doesn't know if there's more out there, but at the end of the day, you know, the one thing that I noticed with my first marriage, and a lot of people, we didn't actually talk. We were madly in love with one another, but we didn't talk. okay, what do you want out of life? Do you want kids? Do you want to live in a house? Do you want to vacation all the time? You know, I thought, you know, that our desires were the same. And it turned out after a couple of years that they weren't.
Right.
She didn't want kids. She didn't want family around. And it was like, wow, this is news to me. And I feel like an idiot saying that. And you would think that you would talk about that stuff, but you got to communicate. You got to make sure. My current wife for the last 26 years, we kind of grew up with a similar close household and did similar things. And I always joke I married my mother, and my current wife, even she's just fun and she's charming and she's beautiful. And the reality is that you need to make sure that the person you're marrying, even for the second time, is what you really want, what you're comfortable with. I always, coming from where I came from, I always thought I was marrying up my first time. She was a ballerina. She grew up in Connecticut, and
For
she
a New
was well
Jersey guy, Connecticut was great, right?
yeah, yeah, well, Connecticut. I grew up in the South Jersey in a little tougher town, and you know, and I realized that after starting my business and working the way I worked, and when I first started my business, put a lot of pressure on that, and I did that. I we got married, bought a house, and I quit my job all within the first 3 months of the marriage. And I worked 18 hours a day for 7 days a week for 3 years straight. And then got the business where I thought it was in good place. And then, okay, let's have kids. And she's like, who are you? What happened here? So marriage was a very difficult thing at that point because and I all but ignored her for 3 years. And, it was more of a roommate situation. And I was ready to move to the next level. And she was like, I'm out of here. And it was sad. It was really sad and it hurt me. And I'm probably still not over it totally. But I will tell you that the second time around, make some of the same mistakes that I made the first time, but I recover. And the one thing I've learned a few things by being married for as long as I've been married.
Yeah. What are
One,
those?
say, I'm sorry,
Yes.
you're right. And the ultimate, and it took me 20 years to figure this one out. Do whatever she says and buy her whatever she wants, and you will be married forever. So those are my
I was
my
gonna say I could summarize all three of those points into two words: the power of yes, dear.
you know what? The best part was she was yelling at me for something a couple months ago. And I said, you're right. And she wanted to argue and she couldn't. You're right.
Yeah. Yeah. There
What
you
do
go.
you mean? I want to fight. And no, I'm not letting you fight. And it just, at the end of the day, it's a partnership. And sometimes you fight and fight and fight. And
Yeah.
it's very hard.
So, wrapping up, I have two final questions for you that I ask all of my guests as a wrap up. The first one is I'm always fascinated to know what content you are consuming right now podcasts, books you're reading. What is it that you're consuming that is impacting you right now?
I'm a ferocious reader. I read uh, 3 newspapers in the morning. The local one, the Wall Street Journal, and then another for international business. I read books a lot. I listen to books a lot. I have Audible. I like biographies. I love biographies,
What
and
biography are you reading right now?
Well, actually, right now, I am, people are going to laugh at me because there's a couple of books that I'm in the middle of. One is, uh, what is, hold on. The Let Them Method, the Let
Oh,
Them
I
Theory.
love that book. Yes,
Yeah, and it's true. Let
yes,
them. And it's a
absolutely.
great, I thought it's a great book. And then The Psychology of Spending, which was the second book, uh, which is very good. But I love biographies. I think I just finished uh, one about a businessman, Kirk Kerkorian, who's been passed away for years. Uh, but there's all sorts of books I love to read, and you learn a lot from how people operate, uh, and 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 you can those people that what's the saying about history? If you fail to remember history, you're bound to repeat it.
You know, as a
And
lawyer, I call that a precedent. You know, in lawyer terms, you look at cases as precedent as to what happened in a prior case or whatever. So
right.
I think of biographies as precedent.
Yeah. I love biographies unfortunately, a lot of the people I read biographies of are dead. I'm in the middle of reading on some of Charlie Munger's thoughts, uh, who was partners with Warren Buffett for all those years.
Yeah.
And the reality is, Warren Buffett was a great investor, and Charlie Munger was right by his side. But truthfully, they they embraced the power of compound earnings, and they did it for 70 years. Warren Buffett is so wealthy because he's been alive. He's 95, 96 years old. He's been investing for 70 plus years.
He lived
And guess
long
what?
enough to have a good strategy.
Exactly. He could have just figured out how to invest in his 60s and for 30 years just made his money by
Yeah.
doing nothing and letting it compound.
Yeah.
So you learn things.
Yeah.
Those are what I do. Every morning it's a ritual. I get up, I read the paper, I read, try to listen to a book or read a book. Um, but there's a lot of also technical reading because I am a CPA and I try to stay up on that, on my tax knowledge because of I do quite a few interviews like this. So people try to trick me and ask me tax questions, which I try to do my best to answer. And sometimes I'll be like, I have to get back to you with an answer because I don't know that one. And now with the new tax bill, there's a lot of new tricks, uh, out there. It's funny. My wife and I, she was watching football. She's a big football fan, and she's like, "When did they come up with that rule?" I go, "Probably the same time that they changed the
Tax
charitable
code.
donation tax law."
I love
Like,
it.
what? I'm like, "Don't worry about it."
And so my final question that I ask every one of my guests is if, you know, we know none of us know when our last day is going to be. And if today were your last day, what would you want your legacy to be known for?
I think my legacy has been set. I think I want to be remembered as a great father, a great husband, and a great friend.
I love that. And I think you've been a friend to many for helping people solve their financial problems. So I would concur with that. So, all right. Well, I'm not sure if I froze up, but maybe we can edit that out. Howard,
That did freeze up. You want to do that again one more time?
yeah. So we none of us know if today is going to be our last day, and so if today were your last day, what is the legacy that you want to be remembered for?
I think I want to be remembered as a great father, a great husband, and a great friend.
I like that. I like that because I think in a broad sense, you've been a friend to so many people by helping them get out of debt and solve a problem that's so personal and emotional for people that have actually done that for a lot of people that you probably don't even know. You've been a friend to them.
It's interesting because, our website, we have thousands of people come to our websites every day. And I get these letters, thank you so much. You saved my family, you saved my life, you saved my marriage. Uh, that's a powerful thing. And as an accountant, I never got those letters.
Yeah,
Uh, but as a debt counselor and a person that actually makes an impact on not the wealthy, but the middle class and the
right,
less wealthy,
right.
uh, that's powerful. I have the greatest job, Michelle, that anybody could ever ask for. Because you know what? When I shut down my computer and I walk out the door every day, I know I changed somebody's life
Yeah.
for the better.
Oh, and nobody can ask anything more. Thank you so much for joining me today. I just appreciate you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for asking me to be on the show.